So just a little bit about my background and the reasons why I'm here today. I started working in mainstreaming complex knowledge several years ago because I recognised that there was a bit of a gap. And the gap related to the fact that there were all these people out there, all these researchers and academics creating piles and piles and piles of knowledge. And of course, that's increasing with the pressure on academics to continually publish. And yet that knowledge and those publications were often, and still are often, not going far beyond the journals in which they're published, and often far beyond, you know, under 10 readers. So I wanted to be a part of the push, I guess, to get some of that important knowledge out to the people who really need to hear it. And secondly, to also use that knowledge to change the tides of public opinion, to change the way the public thinks about things, and also to perhaps instigate some social change. So that's really important to me. I currently work with around 70 academics from the School of Public Health and Social Work, and I build their digital profiles with them. And I also work really hard with them on disseminating their research findings. So what I'm going to do today is share some of my experiences of doing that over the last several years, and perhaps it will help you in your research dissemination and digital profile building as well. This is quite a basic introduction to digital profile building, and there will be some of you listening today who perhaps already have really active and engaging social media platforms. I think there'll still be something in here for you today. And I'm also really happy to answer questions at the end that might relate to the people who have been who are a bit more experienced in promoting their work through social media. So I'm happy to do that. So part of my work is to work with researchers on developing communication strategies for research projects, which often researchers can forget about. So they get so engaged in the research that they forget about the part where they have to share findings with other people. So I help them with that. I help with developing research. So I come in at the really ground level of conceptual ideas and help to build those, and that helps me eventually to disseminate the knowledge. Increasingly, I'm working with institutions and organisations on advocacy and having a presence online that enables them to persuade and educate the public. But today I'm going to be talking about two of these aspects of what I do, which is building digital profiles for researchers and mainstreaming complex knowledge through social media channels. So let's begin. So social media affords academics so many opportunities to engage people and to enhance their work. Now, obviously, the first port of call is the sharing of research findings. And if this is done well, then it will have follow-on effects for advocating for social change, for educating the public and so on. But there are other aspects to social media that sometimes, from my observations and in my experience, academics tend to forget about. And so what it leads to is a kind of a sharing of eventual findings on platforms, and that's it. And I think there's so much more to what we are able to do on our platforms than simply saying, I published this paper and here are my findings, because in reality, most of us don't publish every week or every month. And so that leads to a fairly kind of scarce and barren social media presence. So there are other things that we can look at doing on our social media as well. And one of the big ones for me is the promotion of students. I mean, so many of us are working with so many talented, extraordinary students who don't have their own audiences yet and who are not yet recognised as experts in their field. And if we do have a social media audience, and if we do have followers, we can actually lend that to our students to promote them. So if you are feeling a little humble about wanting to promote yourself all the time, which is sometimes the experience of people, looking at it as an opportunity to build audiences so that you can promote your students may seem a bit more palatable to you. We can also position for our own opportunities and for opportunities for our students in terms of research collaboration and partnerships. So social media is an opportunity to engage institutions and government and non-government organisations in the work that we do. And we can also position for opportunities in other media. So there have been several examples at my school, for instance, where academics have, for instance, written a mainstream blog about some of the work that they're doing, or some other form of content, and that's actually been picked up by bigger media organisations. So I think that can also be very powerful as well. We can learn from others on social media, and I know that some people are quite disparaging about the type of knowledge that is available on social media, and we know that we have to be quite discerning in who we get the knowledge from and sort of what the nature of that knowledge is. But having said that, we can fill our networks with colleagues and you know, people from other institutions and organisations who really can add to and enhance our work. So sometimes that's a little bit about kind of the circles that you're travelling in, which is true in real life as well, isn't it? We can also keep on top of knowledge currency in that same way. And having that social media presence is becoming increasingly important for winning grants. And I know here in Australia that some of our major competitive grants actually require some sort of strategy for disseminating the work to larger audiences and for giving the grant organisations recognition for having given the money. So increasingly, whilst it's not the the central factor in getting a grant, increasingly you are becoming appealing as a grantee if you have an audience and if you have some means of distributing the knowledge that you have gathered. And finally, I just want to mention briefly, and this is something that I don't think I have a very firm view on yet. I think there are sort of lots of different arguments around the ethical imperative of disseminating work through social media channels or any channels. But I'd just like to suggest as a kind of moment for reflection that often we're given grant money, that's really hard to come by. We are privileged to the extent that we've been called to do this work to increase knowledge and to hopefully make the world a better place. And so given that perhaps there is some sort of ethical imperative to make sure that, once we've got our findings in and once we've published in journals, that it doesn't stop there and that we are actually, taking on the role very seriously as public academics and using the vast and available audiences that that social media affords to spread our messages. So I'm just going to talk about two main concepts today in terms of shaping messages and building digital profiles. And they are audience-focused messages and researcher at the core. These are two ideas that are not particularly new in marketing and communication, but I think there is a translation over to the academy that that we can perhaps learn from. So in my experience of working with academics and researchers on shaping messages, what I've noticed and observed, and you may have observed the same thing in yourself or in your colleagues, is that we are often working in quite niche areas that we're very enthusiastic about and that we know a lot about, but that aren't particularly available or of initial interest to audiences. And so what we have there is this tension when we're on social media of being that person who knows a lot about something that not many people are that interested in. And so our messages can sometimes forget that there's an audience there who, A, we need to engage, and B, we need to kind of step back with a little bit and shape our messages so that they can become engaged with them. And this isn't necessarily about dumbing down messages or treating your audience as though they're stupid, but it's more about taking your audience on the journey of your knowledge. And I think that's really important to keep at the fore when you're thinking about shaping your messages. So I'm just going to take another sip of tea because I've got a bit of a cold today and my throat's a bit tickly. So in thinking about audiences, and you might all have additional spaces that you can add to this in your experience, but the audience for scholarly communications is actually very diverse depending on your area of research. So it can be made up of students or prospective students, and often we can attract very talented students through that sort of cult of personality and through wanting to be the person that they want to study under. But of course, that doesn't happen if they can't find you. Industry, government, non-for-profit, non-government organisations, which that even that category is so diverse. Partners in research or potential partners. And I know that this doesn't apply in all disciplines, but I know that in our work in public health and social work, those potential partners are extremely important to us getting our research off the ground, getting access to participants, getting access to industry knowledge and so on. Employers may be important to you, especially if you're an early career researcher. And we can't forget the mainstream public, who are often paying through their tax for your capacity to do research, and sometimes getting the findings out to the grassroots, out to the sort of on the ground people can have an extraordinary capacity to spark change. And that part's, I don't know about you, but that part's really exciting for me. So some messages may need to be designed for a specific audience. So you may be speaking specifically to industry in some of your messages, or you may be speaking specifically to the mainstream public for other messages. Maybe speaking specifically to someone who you'll be interested in working for. What I'm saying through this point is I'm encouraging you to be mindful of that. So often I see messages on social media that come from academics and researchers where I can't specifically see where the audience for that is. And it sounds bland, and it sounds very unengaging because it doesn't have the specific audience in mind. Now, don't worry if you're sending out a message that's specifically for industry and you know for a fact that you've got also a lot of students who follow you, because I think audiences have developed the capacity to discern between what's a message for them and what's a message for someone else. And, you know, I think we forget about the tendency to scroll. So people are actually quite happy to just keep scrolling through messages if they can see that the message isn't for them. And you probably do this all the time without even thinking about it when you're engaging with social media. I know I do. So the second concept I want to talk about today, or introduce to you, is this notion of researcher at the core. And this is a very important one for us to think about in terms of individual researchers increasingly. And whether we like it or not, and I know there's a big push against this here in Australia, and rightly so, but like it or not, we are increasingly, as researchers, becoming our own small businesses. I even hate to say that because it sounds so neoliberal and capitalist, but it's true. So, what's happening is, as the university is becoming more business-like and more corporate, the messages that they're focusing on in their media departments and in their comms departments are actually around the brand of the university. And you would have noticed this. I know I've noticed this at my own university. And they're not as interested in promoting individual researchers unless their research specifically promotes their brand direction. Now, for many of us in universities, our research is niche, it's on the margins, it's not research that is particularly newsworthy or sexy to massive student audiences. So I'll give some examples of that. At the moment at our university, because we're University of Technology, robots are huge. So anyone who's doing research on robots will get promoted through marketing and comms. But if you are doing research on, say, supporting women who are survivors of domestic violence, not so much. So there are also some tricky topics that the university, because of its branding imperative, isn't so keen to touch. And that's just a reality of marketing and communications departments that we have to understand. And in understanding that, we go, okay, how can I bring myself to the center of my own research? How can I develop my own brand so that I don't have to rely on university marketing and communications to do that? And I'll add to that I think it's an error for marketing and communications departments in universities to focus on getting brand associations or affiliates, because that's really difficult to do unless you're one of the prestigious universities of the world like Harvard or Oxford. We're not clothing labels, which can easily attract people looking for identities. We're something really different to that. And I think that the way through marketing and communications that will actually attract audiences is via building that cult of personality, building the prominence of our researchers and academics through all media channels, and actually attracting students through that human connection rather than trying to get them to connect to a brand. And also on that point, I'll just add that in terms of social media specifically, there's a lot of evidence now to suggest that audiences are getting quite fed up with the amount of advertising that's happening on social media. And you might have noticed that that's increased exponentially, say, in the last 4 years. Social media initially had its appeal because of its capacity to bring people together as, you know, in human connections, and to give large audiences, if you like, an insight or a connection with the worlds of people who they admire. So celebrities, you know, academics who are changing the world and so forth. So we need to kind of hold on to that in the way that we approach our own digital profile building. Audiences want to follow you, not your institution. Now, your institution helps you because it adds sort of validity and credibility to your research work, but it's actually you as a human being who they're interested in. So there are 3 components of this idea of researcher at the core, and I'm going to talk through them in this next section. So the first part is the digital profile, and digital platform selection is a really important part of that. You've got so many choices of platforms, and I divide them into two major areas. One is scholarly platforms like Google Scholar, your institutional profile, and mainstream platforms like Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and increasingly TikTok. Regardless of the platform you choose to use, or the platforms, I think you should have a strategy that is contingent on the amount of time and energy you've got to put into these platforms. There are usually 2 main components that you can look at, and those are your profile image and your biography, or how you present yourself and who you are on your platform. But before I go into that, I just want to sort of journey into the world of TikTok briefly, because I think that this is a really new and potentially very powerful platform for researchers. I'm not going to focus on every single platform because you can do that yourselves. But I do want to point out a few things about TikTok that may be of interest to you. So at the moment, TikTok has 689 million active users worldwide, and it's managed to accomplish this massive audience in a very short amount of time. And I also keep in mind that this audience doesn't include the audience from China. So TikTok has a Chinese version, I guess, that is for Chinese audiences only because of because of censorship. So that 689 million doesn't include that massive Chinese audience, which I think is phenomenal. It's got a fairly young demographic at the moment. So 62% of people who use TikTok are aged between 10 and 29, keeping in mind that a lot of your audiences for students are in the sort of 20 to 29 age bracket. Keeping in mind that this is only 62%, there's another 38% there that is over 29 years old. And keeping in mind also that it was initially a platform designed specifically for young people, but I think as its potency increases more broadly, you'll see that age figure rise. Users spend, this is incredible, 52 minutes per day on average on TikTok, which speaks a lot about its capacity to engage people and to keep them on the platform. There's an average of 1 million videos downloaded per day. Again, blow your mind, incredible statistics. The platform has awesome functionality. By the way, I'm not being paid by TikTok to do this. You can download the videos, which is really important and something that you can't do on other platforms. And this means that you can send the actual video to other people, which I think is really important. It's shareable across multiple platforms, which again isn't a function that's available in other social media. So So that means if you make a video, you can connect it across all your LinkedIn, your Twitter, your Facebook, whichever other platforms you use. And an infinite number of videos can be made at the moment. So if you're a user, you can just keep making and making and making and making and build up quite a library of videos. The thing that interests me about the platform is its capacity to make bite-sized teasers, not necessarily a fulsome kind of exploration of all of your work, but little teasers that can send people to your greater bodies of work. And that's what you need. The greater bodies of work already exist out there in your research repositories, wherever you're keeping your articles and so on. But what doesn't exist is the ability for people to actually have a portal into that. And TikTok can potentially provide that. Now, I haven't got an exhaustive list of examples here because as I was kind of making my list, I was like, well, these are the TikTok profiles that I'm really interested in, but I'm aware that people listening today have got such a diverse range of disciplines and areas of research that it probably wouldn't be applicable. But just to give you a little insight or example, at Mamagum, who is a psychologist on TikTok, a psychology researcher on TikTok, has 54,000 followers. Now, if you think of this in terms of Twitter, most academics I know have under 800 followers. It's really quite difficult to get a following on Twitter, and it takes a very long amount of time and lots of work. 54,000. On Facebook, I have 5,000 followers, I think, and that's taken me like 10 years of being on the platform to garner. This is an incredible figure. I want also to draw your attention to the Chemistry Collective, which was an experiment by Stott, Lamb and Hurst, where they set up a TikTok platform specifically to educate people on aspects of chemistry. And they wrote up their findings, and you can get access to that through Stott, Lamb and Hurst 2020. The other thing that you can do on TikTok is hashtag your discipline and get a plethora of profiles that address specifically your area. And you can also hashtag academic TikTok or dark academia if that is your proclivity, and get a range of different profiles. I guess the main point here is that we probably wouldn't be going to TikTok at the moment for, to increase the potency of our own knowledge, or to perhaps even at the moment make connections with other colleagues or industry partners. But what the platform does afford us is the capacity to reach large audiences, to build that, that really human profile of ourselves as like people, not just names on a website, and to attract large audiences. And once we've got those large audiences in place, really the capacity to spread the word about your research and others' research is quite unstoppable. So let's go back to looking at building profiles. Let's go back to sort of the basics of what a profile should look like on any platform, including TikTok. So I like to think about platforms as real estate, as a space for advertising, and every single aspect of your platform is your opportunity to promote who you are and what you stand for. And so often I see platforms that miss those opportunities. So, academics at my school, for instance, who might have a great profile image, but, no biography at all, or a background that is not really working to, promote what they're about. So it's the same with the profile image. It is your opportunity to convey your brand. I thoroughly recommend dedicating a photo session whether it's with a professional photographer or just with your friend with an iPhone and some really good lighting. Wear the clothes that you think are about your brand. Don't necessarily just wear what you think you have to wear because that's what everyone else wears. And get a profile photo that actually shows your humanness and shows your audiences a little bit about who you are. And don't use an avatar, which so many people do as well. Make sure your photo is high resolution. Make sure it's up to date. Don't take a photo with your mouth open. I don't know why this is so common on social media, but and I actually see researchers do this as well. They've got a Facebook profile photo and they've got their mouth hanging open, or they're in their pajamas or something. And I'm not sure why they choose those photos. Just don't. Use the face that you use when you want people to like you. So don't use the face that you think you have to use, or, you know, take some time to actually get that shot that you think really represents you. And also design your background image as well as your foreground. So we'll talk a little bit about that now. In a sec, after we've had a look at these photos. So these are just some examples of what not to do with your profile photo. These are actually some of them photos of academics on my personal Facebook. I'm not making fun of their photos here. I'm not lampooning them in any way, but I just want to use these images as examples of kind of what works and what doesn't work. So obviously we can see the first guy there, the photo's kind of framed in a strange way and the resolution is really bad. It's quite a blurry photo. If you are interested in looking your best, probably don't take a photo from underneath you. Even the most amazing supermodels in the world look terrible when they're photographed from below. Take it from up high. This guy's got the right idea with his selfie stick, but you can see the background of his photo is the room's. I actually don't want to see inside people's personal spaces on the profile photo. If you choose to do that in photos that you upload to your stories or whatever, that's, you know, there may be a strategic reason for that, but I don't think he's really thought much about what's in the background of this photo. I think he's just been quite focused on the fact that he's got his nice suit on and he wants to take a photo. Moving along to the woman here, she I don't think she's using the face that she uses when she wants people to like her. So that's an example of that. And the last guy, something about the lighting, I think. I don't think I would trust my, you can make up your own minds about the kinds of narratives that you want to make about that profile photo, but it's really just not working to make him seem like an appealing human. So the main take-home point here is think strategically about the profile photo that you use. Don't just put up the photo that you took when you were kind of out hiking with your kids because that's the latest photo of yourself that you have. Make it a profile photo. With your biography and your cover image, again, really important spaces for branding, and you can be quite creative with the types of content that you include on these. And a lot of times, in my experience, people aren't that creative with what they put on their biography and background. So you can include where you work if you want that institutional validity. You can include what you do. You can include accolades. Even testimonials. If you've got books, put your book title in there, put a link to your book so people can actually easily find it. You can put your book covers. Importantly, and of great interest to me personally, is you can put calls to action. So, you know, your research sits there, it shows X. What do you want to be a call to action as a result of that? And also key projects, past and present, depending on the platform, depending on, you know, how much you want to talk about. And I just want to draw your attention to this image here. This woman is a very, very famous journalist here in Australia and very well renowned. And this is from her Twitter page. And she actually has a horse on her page, which is a very lovely horse. And maybe she's really interested in horses, and that, you know, that's fine. But you can see the positioning of the horse is rather unfortunate. And I don't think the horse actually represents anything about her work. And she actually has a work profile. So if anything, it's undermining her presence, it's undermining her digital profile to have that image up there, especially given she has interviewed some of the most famous people politically in Australia, which, you know, that would be the first thing I'd be thinking about putting up there, maybe a photo of her with a leading political figure. So we move on now to mainstreaming content. This is the last part of the presentation today. So once you've set up your profile, then the next step, of course, is to think about what kind of content you'll be putting up on your profile. And what I've noticed is a lot of people do get an impetus, a rush to sort of get the platforms up. And once this happens, the platforms can often just sit there and die. There are so many academics and researchers who I have to look up. I have to find them because I want to invite them to something, or you know, I want them to be part of some sort of conversation, and I can't find them on their institutional profiles. And so I go to social media to try to find them. I might find a really old Twitter account that's not active, so I can't be sure that if I message them on that, they'll even get the message. Their Facebook is blocked and personal, so I can't access that. And they're not on Instagram, so they're unfindable, which is a problem. And sometimes when academics move institutions a lot, I might be able to find the old email address for where they used to work, but I can't find the new one. So the point here is, you know, have a strategy going in to setting up the platform, and know that it's going to be an active platform, and you're going to be uploading content regularly, so people know you're around and they can find you and hear your messages and follow you. So a very typical academic update, and I don't know if this has been your experience on social media as well, but it's definitely been mine, is I just published this new paper, or I'm very excited because I just published this new paper, or I'm very honoured to be a part of this research team, etc., etc. I think you know the sort of genre of update that I'm talking about. That's not very audience focused, is it? Because quite frankly, the audience doesn't care what you're excited about. The audience actually doesn't care that you just published a new paper. Audiences are very self-centered. They care about what they can get, what they can learn, how you can make their lives better, how you can save them money, how you can save them time. That's what they're interested in, and that's what will engage them. How you can make their kids' lives better by X, or you know, how they can change something that really bugs them about the world. And these are the levels that we need to engage them on, not on the level of trying to get them to care about something that we care about. So there are better ways to shape this message, and some of the ways are through tips that the audience can use. So, you know, I've done this research on X, it showed X, and here's how you can apply it in your life. You can also create a story of the findings. Like, what do they mean for, you know, the people who are most affected by them? What do they mean in terms of making the world a better place? You know, what were some of the hurdles that you had to go through to actually achieve this research? And then add on to it an evocative image, because images also, you know, get post boosted in the algorithms. And obviously, if you're on TikTok and making videos, you're telling the story of your research on TikTok, and you can even use like those evocative images in the background of your videos. If you want free still images, you can just go to Unsplash. They've got quite a reasonable catalogue there. Or you can do what I increasingly do, because I know definitely in public health and social work, especially in social work, it's really tricky to get images that don't polarize, that don't marginalize already marginalized groups and that kind of thing. So increasingly, I'm just making quotes about the research and putting them up as images. You can screenshot, you can put a post up about your findings and then screenshot the abstract. So, you know, and often abstracts now have, you know, those 3 take-home points for the audience. So you could just screenshot that and put it up. You can make a video abstract about your findings, which TikTok just makes this so much easier now, but you can also use recording on Zoom to make your video abstract, like many of us did today for the conference, to tell you all about what we'll be talking about. You can post your progress, and oh my goodness, this is so interesting. So a lot of people focus specifically on findings, which I've done here. I've given you a whole list of ways that you can represent your findings through social media posts. But I want to know about what led you to those. Like, I want to know, as an audience member, how you came up with the idea. Like, where did it arise from? What were some of the hurdles and challenges that you had to face in getting the research out? You know, what were some of your preliminary findings and how did they differ from your final findings? All of those kinds of things add to the story of the research. Did you do field work, and where were you? And that's exciting. And can you take photos of you, you know, in Kiribati or something like that? And this way, as an audience member, I'm engaged right from the beginning of the research, and I don't have to sort of just get this sort of knowledge dump at the end of it that really doesn't have any, you know, if the findings aren't of interest to me personally, there's no reason for me to engage with those. But if you're telling the story of your research, it doesn't matter what it's about. I'm interested in the progress that you're making, because that's a human story. And the other thing is post between papers to keep your audience connected, and that can look like a whole bunch of different things. It can be the story of your life as a researcher. It can be tips and tricks for students, which a lot of people on TikTok are doing at the moment. It can be, you know, curating articles and blogs and that kind of thing from the area of your research. It can be commenting on those blogs and articles. You can appear in podcasts. You can do all sorts of things to enter into the public conversation about your research, so that you don't, you know, just have that post once every year, you know, when your article comes out. And finally, I'm going to end today's presentation with what I call the golden rule of social media. And again, this is something that in my observation and experience, people tend to forget. But social media is social. And what that means is, well, for me anyway, that there is an element of reciprocity here. So when we're in social situations, you know, this is a weird one because I'm the one doing the talking, but at the end of this, you know, we're going to have a conversation about, you know, the work. We don't just walk into a party and make announcements and then walk out. We engage, we interact, and you can do that on social media through liking other people's posts. And believe me, you know, the thrill of having someone whose work you admire like one of your posts about something is wonderful, and you can give that to other people, especially if you're a leading researcher in your area or whatever, someone who's well respected. You can repost other people's stuff, share it. You can nod to it in whatever content you're making. You can, comment on people's posts as well. There are all sorts of ways that you can engage and you can acknowledge the other in your social media presence. And I think that if you do this, you've got much more of a chance of gathering an audience that's not just, a kind of fake audience that doesn't engage with you, but actually garnering that engagement from other people as well. Because unless you water your plant, as I know, because I'm sitting here in a room full of plants, your plant will die and your social media will amount to nothing. So that's the end of my presentation today.